everyone. Thank you for joining me again for another episode of Awakening 37 Beyond the Scoreboard. This episode, we're going to talk with Ben Zobrist of the Chicago Cubs and of the Kansas City Royals, and we'll get a little insight into his, trials and tribulations throughout his career, as well as growing up through the minors and college and everything like that. So please join me for that today, and enjoy the show.
It's been
Good.
good.
Now, I'm not sure. I've been speaking with Liz. I'm not sure what she told you about this, but I kind of want to get into more of like a mental aspect of the game. And I kind of I looked into your story and your background, and I followed you quite a bit because I'm a huge Cubs fan. Um, but I know that you didn't exactly have an ideal path to the majors. And I wonder how that really impacted you, like as a kid. Like how did your mental well-being go as a kid growing up? And like, you know, who was that one person that really triggered that? And just kind of things like that. Just I want to be more of a kind of a platform for parents and coaches as well as players so they can help themselves mentally because, it seems like mental health is more in the forefront nowadays than it was before.
Yeah, well, and it should be. It's a different game than it was when I was a kid or when we were kids. It's a lot more pressure involved. There's a lot more money on the line at earlier levels for not just for coaches but also for the kids that are getting recruited. And it starts way younger than it probably should, to be honest. What's at least developmentally healthy for these kids. At some level, we still were kind of growing up in the beauty of, hey, the goal here is for the kids to grow in character while they're playing. That was the 80s and 90s of playing Little League baseball and maybe some travel baseball. And travel baseball at the time
Mhm.
for me was traveling to towns that were 30 minutes away, around my area, like driving in your car with your parents, and that was it. Whereas now that's your local city, and everything else is like you're flying all over the country to go to these major tournaments and showcases and things. I think my experience was pretty idyllic, Americana as a young kid growing up in a small town. I was in Eureka, Illinois, 4,500 people. We had one stoplight in the town at the time. Now we have two, so we're really moving up. Um, and the coaches and the parents there, nobody got too crazy. And really the coaches were there to serve the community. And some of my favorite coach ever, Coach Gertis, my junior high coach, still kept it fun, very structured for us. I learned that we could win and be good, but also we could have a lot of fun at the same time and really kind of grow as players and learn the strategy of the game of baseball. He was also, by the way, my coach for basketball and track at the same time, right? That's how that works in
Small
small
town.
towns. Now it's different. You've got these kids that are signing up for a travel team sometimes at 7, 8 years old, and that travel coach is in charge of that program, and everything's about baseball, and they got to have a year-round program for this thing, and they got to have season. Okay, now we're in season with tournaments, but then you're going to go into your tryout season, and then you're going to go into your off season and your workout season and your these other parts of the game. And it's really hard not to specialize. If you're a parent or a coach, it's hard not to have your kids specializing at very early ages. And I just if you look at the numbers, actually the people that play professionally, uh, almost all of them did not specialize early on. They played multiple sports from early ages, and that really helped develop them as an overall athlete. As their body's changing and growing, they're learning how to do different movements with it athletically. And if you're just doing this one sport's movements, you're really not getting those other systems developed as an athlete, right? So you may be able to play that sport, but if you don't go pro in that sport, you ain't going pro in anything else. There ain't no doubt about it.
Yep.
So if you'd have asked me what my favorite sport was as a kid, I would have said it's basketball. I love basketball. Illinois, we basketball was the thing. Illinois, Indiana, those states, Iowa, Caitlin Clark. I mean, that there's a reason why there's really good, fundamentally sound basketball players coming from those states. And I was one of those kids dreaming about that, watching the movie Hoosiers growing up, and dreaming about winning a state championship in basketball. That was really my dream. It wasn't to play Major League Baseball, but because I developed my athleticism in basketball in the winter, football in the fall, ran road races in the spring and track and ran cross country in the fall too, and did other things that developed other parts of my system besides baseball in the summer. That was how I developed as an athlete, and that made a big difference in regard to not only physically what I needed, but also the mental side of the game. And we can talk about that a little bit here. I know you mentioned it. Would you like me to go into that a little
Yeah.
bit?
Yeah, sure. Go right into it.
Uh, Mentally as a player, you have to understand there's different needs at different times. The first thing you're learning how to do as a kid is do I like this? Is this fun? Do I want to keep pursuing this and practicing doing it? If you can't have fun practicing as a kid, you don't do it. Like if it's not fun at some level, you're not going to have the passion to pursue this at the higher levels, because the higher you go, the more dedication and devotion to good solid practice you're going to need. And if you don't like practicing, I'm sorry, but you're just not going to make it. You have to enjoy the actual practice stuff and the things. You can't simply enjoy games. Um, so fun is a really key component. It's got to stay fun. I mean, it doesn't mean it's not going to be hard and it's not going to be something that you're going to grind for at times. But parents, coaches, you have to keep it fun for the kids, and they have to be able to have fun with it when things aren't even going well. And I know that's not always easy, but you have to learn to fail. That's the second point, is resilience in that particular sport. Learning how to fail and keep getting up and trying again, getting back for your next at bat, step back in the box, find a way to turn the page quickly from those failures and move into the next moment, because the game keeps moving on. And so learning how to deal with failure is a big, important, key component. Um, but I think the last component is when you start to get a measure of success, what do you do with that? Does it become your whole identity? Do you just put everything into that, or can you still have some balance? And I was fortunate that I had parents that were really involved in the faith community. I had coaches that were really involved in the school community and other things besides their sport. And we had a lot of community members that it was less about the team winning and more about how are we developing these kids as quality citizens of our community. And that gets lost in the shuffle a lot of times nowadays. So as they get success, it's like all of a sudden coaches and parents and scouts and college recruiters and everybody starts, it's like this, they're just jumping on this kid
Mhm.
like, oh, this kid's amazing, he's good, and he's going to do this and he's going to do that. And all of a sudden there's all this heaps of pressure on this kid. They may be succeeding and doing really well at the age of 13, and now they have all this pressure of, well, now I got to get recruited to go D1, or now I got to start thinking about maybe this is going to be my career someday. We have got to get away from that. I mean, oh my goodness, that is so negative for these kids. They need to be children while they're children and adolescents while they're adolescents, and not having to be professionals before they ever get there or thinking about that. And that's the tough thing about NIL right now. That's what's way different. There's two things that are way different now for the mental state of these kids, in my opinion. There's probably more than that, but there's the two that I see that are the biggest problems. One is the money being infused into this so early makes this a career move before it should be a career move for adolescent kids. But even beyond the money and the potential for moving on to the next level, um, even just getting recruited, there's a lot of money in being recruited because it pays for your college, right? Like, I mean, that's a big deal for parents.
Mhm.
So parents going, well, if I put thousands of dollars into this sport for you at the age of 12 up or earlier up, we're hoping that turns into a scholarship for junior come 18, 19. Look, we can't put that pressure on the kids. That's unhealthy. They shouldn't really be thinking about that until at least high school. And honestly, they don't need to be signing or verbally committing before a certain time either. And you're like, well, but maybe that scholarship's going to go away. Well, so what? Okay. What's more important? If they're good enough, I'm going to tell you, they're gonna get money to play.
Yep.
If they're good enough. I personally, I got zero offers coming out of high school. I was 19 years old and had zero money offers to play college baseball. And I can tell that whole story, which I do that when I'm doing speaking engagements. I don't need to do
Mhm.
that today. But eventually, one college coach that summer, Elliot Johnson from Olivet Nazarene, an NAIA baseball school, offered me a scholarship to go play there. So what did I do? It was private school. I got my schooling paid for, and it combined with my academic stuff. Academics are important.
Hmm.
Don't
Yeah.
forget that. That's going to help pay for school too and get you there. But combining those two things allowed them to give me that opportunity to play college sports. And then it becomes a little bit more like a job because legitimately it's paying for your ability to get your college degree where your parents would be paying for it or your job would be paying for it, right? So then it becomes a lot more serious at that point because it legitimately is paying for your way to be there. So then that's when I really fully committed myself. When I wasn't in the classroom, I was thinking of this is my job and I got to get really good at this. They're paying me to do this. So if I can help this team win, regardless of whether I play professionally or not, this is paying my way and I need to honor that commitment to the university and honor that commitment. That's helping me be able to get my degree.
Right.
And we've kind of lost sight of that now at the college level because kids get to the college level and they're thinking about brands. Like how am I going to become my own individual brand? Don't think about that. Think about how am I going to help my group, my team, my company, how am I going to help my company succeed because they're paying me to be this role, whatever it is, legitimately. And that's when it does become a little bit more like a job. And that's preparing you for what happens when you're 22 and you graduate college and you need to actually do that for a company, right? So there's some benefits to that. And that's the way I thought of it because I never really thought professional sports was an option. So let me tell you what that did for my mental state. It kept me focused on not what's going to happen in a couple years or not what I'm trying to build to get to the next level. It's how am I going to build to grow myself as an individual and my team right now, today? How do I stay present in the moment? If you talk to any professional athlete,
Yep.
Joe Madden was my manager most of my career. They're going to tell you you need to be present. Stay present in the moment. Focus on today. Too many times when you're 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, you're thinking about what am I going to do when I get to college? Let that play itself out. Stay in today. Be the best version of yourself today. And if those opportunities are meant for you, they're going to find you. And that's what happened to me. So part of what my younger years did for me is it taught me how to play the sport you're in today. Be the best basketball player you can be today. Be the best track athlete you can be today. Be the best baseball player. Play left field the best you can today. And by the way, tomorrow you're going to sit the bench. And then the next day you're going to play second base. So be the best bench player. Be the best second baseman you can be and figure out how you can fulfill those roles. Because if you fulfill that role in that particular day, I guarantee you it's going to build some of the character that you're going to need to stay present and be the best version of yourself in a job someday, or in the role as a parent someday, in the role as a provider someday for your family. And so those are the things that my community taught me, my young coaches taught me. I was never banking on anything happening professionally, and look what happened. The opportunity eventually presented itself. It's difficult for these kids and parents and coaches to keep that in the view right now because there's so many other things being thrown at you. So, okay, I still only said one of those things. The second thing that's a big problem for these kids, I'll make this quicker, is social media. Social media and game changer and some of these team apps and things like that where you're paying attention to the stats of the entire season. I have no idea what I was ever hitting when I was 12 years old.
Yep.
I have no idea what
Exactly.
my average was. I could have been hitting 600, I could have been hitting 100 and I wouldn't have known.
Nope.
All I knew was that our record as a team. That's the only thing I knew. And I didn't even know that in high school until the end of my seasons. Like I was like playing high school season. I'm like, I don't really know what I'm hitting until I get to later in the season and somebody said, "Hey, did you know you're hitting 330 or whatever?" I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." I don't see it on the scoreboard. That's part of the problem now is they are getting measured for everything they're doing. Every at bat, every strikeout, every stat is measured and they're looking at this and that. I'm not opposed to high school athletes having statistical knowledge through TrackMan or through Rapsodo or through some of these devices that actually show them what their spin rates are and launch angles. There's
Give them
ways to
feedback.
use that. There's ways to use that for these young players, but the negative way to use it is for them to be looking and comparing their stat to everybody else's stat on a regular basis. You can't pay attention to that. If they're looking at that and have access to that all the time, that is detrimental to their mental state because they're not focused on what I can do. They're focused on what am I doing compared to what everybody else is doing. And sometimes the best you should be doing is hitting 250. So don't compare yourself to the guy next to you who's hitting 350. Let's focus on how you get from 250 to 260 or 250 to 275. How do you do that for you? Because you're building yourself as a ball player. And it's just too bad right now that there's this, we've all got these devices we have to deal with where you constantly can look at yourself compared to everybody else. And that's just unhealthy, right? So the more we can put these down, especially young people that don't have brains that are fully developed and don't know how to make those decisions, the more we can put that down and let them do physical things that actually develop their body and mind and spirit and everything involved, they're going to be better off. So that's that's a big, long-winded way of saying those are the things that they're facing and how we can start to move beyond that.
It's very true though, and it's nice to hear someone like you say, growing up, you had no idea what your batting average was. Because, I was the same way. Growing up playing baseball, I never knew. I mean, I don't think I actually knew what my batting average was, like you said, until I was in high school, and it was maybe at the end of the season. But
Yeah.
other than that, it was kind of like, what did I do today? What can I do the next game? Kind of like what you're saying, staying present in what you can do. And I kind of do that trying to help my little one too. It's not what we're looking at 10, 15 years down the road. What one thing did you do in your batting stance today that we can fix? Or what one little thing can we tweak that can help you on your next at bat or something like that. So yeah, I really like that. I do like that you pointed out Joe Madden too, because I love Joe Madden. I actually tried to find my shirt that said "Try not to suck." Um, but what is one thing that Joe? Because I know you played for him in Tampa and in Chicago. What is one thing that you remember about Joe that just really stands out?
Uh, you know, I think Joe had this intelligent uh intelligent smirk about him, I think, that I enjoyed because he always kind of had an idea of how he was going to circumvent the system and find a way to do something new and different. Do the same thing that's been done, but find a way to traditionally put a new spin on it, put his own, nuanced spin on it that like he was still playing with the game. He didn't stop playing the game just because he physically wasn't on the field. As a manager, as a coach, he was helping guys play with the mental side of the game, helping try to nuance the language and find a way for us to think through things in a new, fresh way. Every offseason, one thing that he did is he would read different books and he would try to catch something from his own education and his own enjoyment from those readings, and he would find a way to let's do something that we've done before better, more efficient, in a new, fresh way. Package this in a way that is more interesting and helps the game continue to move forward, but still do the things traditionally that the game has always done well. And that's why he's forever an outside the box thinker, but that's why he's had so much success as a manager because he doesn't just take things at face value and roll with them. He's like, how do we nuance this and help this change as you guys change and as the game changes?
That's awesome. Yeah, Joe's always been one of my favorite coaches to watch. And when he came to the Cubs, I was super excited. And then obviously when you came to the Cubs, I was super excited because I live in Kansas. So when the Cubs aren't in it, I kind of am forced to root for the Royals. And I grew up actually about 45 minutes from Kansas City. I grew up in a little town called Atchison, Kansas. And my dad worked for a radio station, so I used to go to Royals games all the time. So I still rooted for you guys, and I thought it was awesome what you did in 2015. But what you did in 2016 was even better. I wanted to ask your thoughts on the two World Series. What were your thoughts on the two?
Yeah.
I mean, because they
Well,
were so
people,
different
yeah.
between.
People want me to compare them, and it's hard to do because they're two different experiences. I'll just say this. I was glad I got the Kansas City experience before the Chicago experience. Because if you switch those, it almost looks like, oh, well, the Kansas City is way smaller. But at
Right.
the time, because for me, I had never won before, Kansas City is only a city of what, 700,000 people
Yeah.
technically, to where when you put 1 million people for their parade all in Kansas City at the same time, I mean, it was an amazing experience. It was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. And the Kansas City faithful, and this being a Midwesterner, it's like, I mean, these people are blue collar people. And they root for their team hardcore, whether they're winning or losing. And they've had quite the run recently with the Kansas City Chiefs,
Yeah.
and all that success. But for the Royals, it's not been like that, right?
Mhm.
So for these Royals fans that are faithful, they waited 30 years for things to really turn around between 1985 and 2015. And the cool thing about that is I actually lived in Kansas City area in Belton,
Mm.
just outside of Kansas City.
Yeah.
My dad was at a Bible college there when I was real little, I think about 5 years old or whatever, 4 years old, when Kansas City was winning the first time.
Oh, okay.
Or
Back in
not the
'85.
first time, when they were winning in 85. I was there. And so we were big Royals fans at the time. And full circle moment, I'm playing for the Royals in 2015, and we find a way to win that championship, and I got to be a part of that. So to be a part of all that was really, really special, and the Kansas City faithful embraced me, even though I came in late through a trade, and I wasn't like an Alex Gordon who grew up in that organization and saw it change, but they still embraced me like one of their own, and still do to this day. So it was a very special experience. And then I go to Chicago, and I'm with my old manager again, Joe Madden, and we had been to a World Series with Tampa Bay, but here we are trying to, Theo Epstein's trying to break his second curse of his, the Boston Red Sox curse that he helped break, and now he's trying to help break the Cubs curse of 108 years at that point. And you can't really compare a 108-year curse to anything else. The loyal fans of Chicago who had endured the lovable losers scenario for so long, and some of the cursed moments, that had taken place over the years, uh, to to see that all come together, and to see it come together in a game seven, extra inning game seven, knowing everything that was on the line, and to be in the center of all that, let's just say, was overwhelming, to say the least, from
Yeah.
my standpoint. It was nothing that I ever considered being a part of as a player. And then when you find yourself kind of in the middle of that moment, and I'm standing with the World Series MVP Camaro, and I'm like for the Chicago Cubs, and I'm hugging Bill Murray and Eddie Vedder, and like it's so bizarre in that moment. You're like, what's happening right now in my life? And you go do Jimmy Fallon and Conan O'Brien, and like I'm doing things that like I don't do. This is not really me,
Right.
human being. Um, it was overwhelming, and it did a number on me personally. But when you look out on stage at Millennium Park or Grant Park, and you see 1 million people in front of you, and you just went past 6+ million people in the parade, it's like, oh my good, it must be like must be like what it was like for the Beatles when they were around crowds at the time in the 60s, because it's like this is something like we've never seen. We've
Yeah.
never been in the center of all of that, and under like it was the something like the sixth or seventh largest peaceful gathering in world history, something like that. It was some sort of crazy monumental thing for peaceful gatherings, and it was overwhelming. That's the only way I can say. It was like nothing I've ever or will probably ever experience again.
I can tell you the funniest thing being a fan is I was actually at work for Game 7, and I worked for a cable company, so fortunately I got to watch the game, and I was able to rush home and watch, the rain delay and everything, and I was able to rush home and watch the ending, and it was so funny because when the final out happened, everybody in my house went crazy, and I just sat there, and everybody's just looking at me like, "What is wrong with you?" I'm like, I'm just waiting for the other shoe to fall. I'm like, it's just
Yeah.
for 30 some years,
Yes.
something's
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
And so like it took me a while to process the excitement, but it was so cool and it couldn't have happened to a better team, to be honest. I mean, you guys had some great ball player. I mean, Hayward was on that team, Dexter Fowler, I love him. Uh
David Ross, John
David Ross.
Lester, Lackey. I mean, I could run down the list of everybody in the lineup and everybody on the bench, but that was the beauty about that team too, is everybody had a role.
Yes.
And to the degree to even rookies like Albert Almora, who jumped
Hmm.
in the last second and made a huge base running move in that 10th inning. I mean, there were things like that, and it's just you really couldn't the way that that team came together from the start of the year to the finish was a extremely special experience. So I saw that from the inception at the start of the year to the completion at the end of the year. Kansas City was a little different, right? I came in, they had already created their mojo as a team. It was like, what can I add into this to make sure they get pushed over the top? And they're just different experiences, right? Two different experiences, but both equally valuable
We're
and enjoyable.
Were Anthony Rizzo and Chris Bryant really as crazy as they always put off on TV whenever I saw them together? Because I remember there was a preseason game where they had them mic'd up, and it was probably the funniest thing I ever watched because they were even giving Rossi some crap during the game, and I was killing me. Were they always that funny?
I think Anthony brought out Chris's funny side together, the two of them. KB's a lot more quiet of a guy, I would say, like just naturally. Just kind of whereas Riz is a little bit more like outspoken and goofy and like kind of team 12-year-old, team 14-year-old perpetually on that team where he's always having fun and wearing his emotions on his sleeve and I think it was easy for KB to kind of just add into that, especially with Rossi being that other something for the young guys to really like dig in with and enjoy the fact that we had Grandpa Rossi and they could make some fun of that. So they were always coming up with fun ideas and goofing around with that. And I think I got into a commercial with them at the beginning of the next year, which was funny. Where I'm sitting like, because they had this the bromance they called Brizzo.
Yeah,
If you remember that, the Brizzo
the
romance or
Brizzo.
bromance. And so it was a commercial that the Cubs put together where I was like sitting at a table like or I was up on a paper like writing in like some potentials like how can I join the bromance kind of a thing. Like could we call this Zobrist, or something like that. It was goofy, but they definitely had a special chemistry as teammates and friends and it was really sad to see kind of at the same time both of those guys get shipped off to different places,
Yeah.
and then Javi at the same time, who was such a big part of that team as well, Javi Baez. And that was like gut punch to so many Cub fans around when that all took place. But the team has to change and grow and morph in different ways as guys start growing and becoming veterans and earning their pay.
Yeah, because I know Bryant was on a pretty low paid contract. I think he was still on his rookie contract, I think, when you guys won. And
Oh
so
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, he was definitely outplaying his rookie contract
Oh
by a
yeah.
lot. So it made sense when he was going into free agency that he was going to find a way. There was going to be some team that was going to pay him his due.
What would you say is the biggest takeaway you have from baseball?
Oh gosh, that's a huge question. The biggest takeaway from baseball to this day is probably um, how to show up every day, to try to show up and be present every day. You don't cash it in. There isn't one day. Baseball is a sport which is different than other sports when you're in season, you really don't have days off. Even your days off, because there's very few of them, your days off are focused on recuperation. It's focused on how do I do less today so that tomorrow I can go back and do this again. Whereas it's not like, oh, you can take a week vacation and just go like totally like
Right.
like let it all hang out. No, you can't. Baseball, it keeps coming at you day after day after day, especially if you're an everyday player. Mentally, the grind is not, oh, it's so hard to play this game. If you watch any one game, you're going to be like, this is such an easy sport. These guys do nothing. Look at the overall body of work on a season. We play way more games than any other sport in a
Mhm.
shorter period of time. Because of that, the mental grind is not the first month. It's the fifth month. It's the fourth and fifth. It's the second half of the season. It's the dog days of August. So it teaches you mentally how to keep showing up. It's going to keep coming at you. So if you don't want to get your butt handed to you the next day, you better show up with the best you have that day. You may not have your best. You may be at 70%, but the team's still asking you to go do your job. And you still got to show up and give the 100% of your 70% that day. And so it teaches you to show up whether you have your best self or not.
That's good to point out. That's a very good knowledge. One who would you say was the funnest pitcher that you faced? Like who did you really enjoy facing? Like when you came up like, "Oh man, I love hitting against this guy."
There's no major league pitcher that any hitter should ever say I love facing, because you're still, even if you're hitting really well against a guy, it's hard to be like batting 500 off a dude.
Right.
He's still beating you usually half the time, even if you're really good against him, he's still beating you. So they're not easy at bats. If you don't show up, he's gonna get you out, if you're not your best self. But there was a couple guys I kind of had their number a little bit. Bartolo Colon was one of those where it just
Really?
kind of seemed like, he was a good pitcher and he
Yeah.
he could even be having a good year for whatever reason. Like I hit home runs off of him. I had some good success off of him. I saw the ball really well off of him. I could take close pitches. I could make good decisions off of him, and I just saw the ball really well and was able to put good swings. So my swing worked with his pitches in a lot of ways. Bartolo was one of those guys.
On the reverse, who was the toughest to face?
Well, I always have to say if you look, there's some stat out there probably that says that who was the player that was involved in the most perfect games or no hitters on the wrong side of it in the history of baseball? I'm probably at the top of that list. It's Tampa Bay. We got no hit or perfect gamed so many times. Joe Madden's the manager of those teams. He and I probably both have the dubious honor of those things as player and manager,
I'll have
but
to look that up. That's pretty
look
interesting.
look it up. If there is a stat, I'm probably at the top of the list. One of those was Felix Hernandez
Mm.
in Seattle, King Felix, and he was so on his game that day. It was ridiculous. Every pitch he had in the bag, he was throwing it where he wanted to throw it. Your best bet was early in the count, guess right, and just put a good hard swing, and hopefully you can make good solid contact. I think I had to, watching him pitch, I had to pick a pitch that I don't hit very well because I knew that was going to be the one that was going to be closest to the middle of the plate. Everything else was going to be nasty and dirty. And it was a get me over curveball first pitch, my second at bat, and I hit a fly ball to left field out, and that was my best shot I had all day. I think the other two opportunities were like nasty split that I probably just doinked and rolled over or struck out on. He just wasn't giving us anything good to hit. Even his fastball would like be there and then move off the plate and be gone. And you're like, how am I supposed to? It's like a 98-mile-an-hour like moving jumping pitch. It's like so difficult to hit, and that was that day for him was like nothing. I've got a couple hits in my career off of him because I faced him so many times, but my stats are not good.
Well,
Definitely
he
not.
was always a really good pitcher, and he just kind of got overlooked because he was out in Seattle. People don't realize how good he was. He was really good. I mean, knowing baseball, I know how good he really
Yeah,
was.
he's a Hall of Famer. Like there's no doubt he's a Hall of Fame pitcher, and he deserves that. And um, yeah, he was tough. I hated facing him.
Speaking of that, you're actually eligible for the Hall of Fame this year. Were you aware of that?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I am aware of that. I had a lot of other people remind me when they found out. I was like, wow, that's it is a huge, huge honor. I don't know that there's any greater honor I will ever have as a baseball player to be even considered in that group of people. Just being on the ballot 1 year is a huge honor. Whether if that's the only year I'm on the ballot. So I'd like to think that some some gift of a writer out there will write my name in and have like one vote that one writer will put in one vote thinking that I deserve to be out, in that place. But I my body of work in baseball uh was good and I feel very satisfied but when you start to get honors like that, you start to think about, oh my gosh, like how many people have were a part of that. Like everybody that played with me and worked with me, kept me on the field, put me on the field, supported me off the field. Uh, I hope that they can take some pride in that. Just knowing like, wow, Ben, at the start of his career, you never would have thought. At the end of his high school career, you never would have thought. In junior high, you never would have thought. Even 5 years into his career, you never would have thought that he would be eligible for something like that. And then, God really blessed me with a lot of health, and I was able to win some key seasons for Tampa Bay and help be a part of those teams that I guess that I get to be in the list with some of those other guys on that ballot, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And when you think about it too, with the Tampa Bay days, you kind of were back when Tampa really started doing good for the first time, weren't you? Wasn't that?
Yeah, I was on that team. Yeah, when
Yeah.
they went worst to first back in 2008. Yankees, we were just like a doormat for the Yankees and Red Sox pretty much every year. The Orioles were decent back then too, and in 2008 it all changed. They changed the mascot from a devil ray to a sunshine ray, and the Lord blessed it and it took off. A lot of people were like, "Well, they took the devil out of the name," so there you go.
I actually have an old inaugural season Tampa Bay Devil Rays jersey.
Oh,
Because
really?
being a Cubs fan, whenever they expand, I'm kind of like, oh, I'll pick one of these teams just so I have somebody else to root for every now and then.
Uh-huh.
And so like I picked Tampa Bay when they came in the league, and I've followed them quite a bit. I actually wore that jersey to Yankee Stadium for a Yankee Tampa Bay game one time.
There you go. Well, thank you for doing that because
Yeah,
there was
I got a
plenty of
lot of dirty looks that day.
there was plenty of those games at the Trop that were felt like away games because they bring so many fans to those games at the Trop. Red Sox, Yankees, and Tigers too, because they're in Lakeland, their spring training. So you'd see a lot of those fans when those teams would come into town.
Oh, yeah, I didn't realize Detroit had all their fans down there too.
A lot of them over in Lakeland area.
Yeah, I really like those Tampa teams when you guys had Madden down there. Who else was on that team? Joyce, I liked him too. He was pretty
Yeah.
good. Um, what's his name? Was Aubrey Huff still there? No,
He got traded when I got.
he was in San Francisco, I think.
Actually, I was involved in a trade when I got traded from Houston over to Tampa Bay. He was in that trade.
Oh, that's what it was. That's right.
So, yeah, they traded him and got me as a young player. Me and a couple other guys.
Oh, but you had Longoria on that team, I think, didn't you?
Oh yeah, Longo was
Yeah.
there. Carlos Pena.
Oh yeah.
There was a lot of BJ Upton and a lot of really really good players, pitchers too. James Shields was there for a while.
Oh yeah.
A lot of really good players that went on to earn bigger contracts elsewhere started as younger guys in Tampa Bay. And Tampa Bay was notorious for finding diamonds in the rough in the bullpen too. Grant Balfour had hit some of his best years there
Yep.
coming in, and then he became an incredible closer over in Oakland after that, becoming a back end piece for teams. There were some really, really good players there.
Yeah, Tampa always pushes out really good bullpen arms left and right. I mean, even David Price came from the bullpen.
Yeah, he started. Yeah, as a Vanderbilt starter, he went straight from Vanderbilt helping them in 2014 to then helping us. Or wait, to 2000 in 2008, he went straight from you know, a first round pick in I think it was June.
Yeah.
Like by October, he was throwing the last out of the going to the World Series against the Red Sox.
Yeah.
Uh, which that's kind of a there. I think that's been monumentalized down there outside the stadium. Now there's a Akinori Iwamura, arms in the air statue down there, showcasing that moment. David was on the mound for that, right? So he's he was definitely a really important part of the bullpen at the start, and then he became a starter and did all of his damage there.
You think we'll ever see a Zobrist statue outside of Wrigley?
Oh no, no, no. No, there won't be that. But there definitely needs to be something commemorating the 2016 team. I think, that would be really special if they can do that, and whoever's involved in that, and really you can't, there was such a team effort that you can't really memorialize any one player or any part of that team because it was such a huge team effort, and you have so many great players all on that team that we got to find a way to do that for Cub fans in general,
Oh
because
yeah.
they were the uh, kind of the spirit that pushed all of that into existence.
Oh yeah, we've been through a lot. I
That's right.
can
They
tell you from
deserved it after all that time.
yeah, I fell in love with the Cubs back in probably about right after the Royals won the World Series, about 86, 87. I started watching them because WGN was on in Kansas for some reason, and I watched about 80 Cubs games a year. And you watch a team play that much, you just get used to the players and you start liking them. And Ryan Sandberg was playing there, and I was a huge Ryan Sandberg fan. So
Yeah.
I do got one last question for you.
Yep.
Since you're like known as like the most versatile utility player ever, what is your favorite position?
Uh, Great question. My favorite position? Well, probably honestly, uh, shortstop. It has to be shortstop. I think as a professional player, I was not fast enough or rangy enough to be a great shortstop. I was pretty rangy in my best years to be a really good second base option as far as what was needed there. But it was pitcher and shortstop, and I pitched right the last
Yeah,
in my career. You don't have to talk about that, but I pitched. But when I was younger, I did pitcher and shortstop, and that's what I was always. I was either pitching or playing short. And in high school, I played a little bit of center field too, but it was really I loved those two key positions because I was always in the action.
yeah,
Shortstop, you're in the action every play. If you're not pitching, it's like you're always moving to the bag and talking to the pitcher and reminding the outfield what the outs are, and every time the ball's hit, you're moving somewhere. That's the way it should be on every position. But shortstop it's really a keystone position. So I really enjoyed short.
yeah. Shortstop's kind of like, I mean, catcher's really your most important guy, but I mean, shortstop's probably the second after that. I mean, and catcher really just because he sees the whole field and he's the only one that can see the whole field.
Yeah, he's the captain. He's the guy that helps control the pitcher and keep the pitcher in line too. So sometimes pitchers are those guys. If they've got kind of that alpha
Mhm.
personality and they want to direct the field a little bit more. But we had some, catchers generally do that, and shortstops will do that a lot for in various ways. So I was fortunate that I had that experience early on in my life.
Well, I want to give you a little bit of time here to kind of talk about your nonprofit here, and what you're doing with that going forward.
Sure, Champion Forward. I mean, yeah, you see it on my screen. Champion Forward is a nonprofit I started a couple years ago for young athletes, parents, and coaches, primarily in the high school ages, I would say, but it crosses boundaries into earlier and later stages in young athletes' development. But it's we help teach some mental and emotional skills around what's needed to deal with what we say is to deal with the feelings that come with the sports experience, the failures that come with the sports experience, and sometimes the fame that comes with the sports experience. So we do that through a couple different ways. We focus on awareness, mental and emotional awareness. So we have some emotional intelligence types of things that we try to teach at younger ages. It's one of the things that I wish I would have been taught and learned about earlier in my career, and I feel like the sports world really needs it, not just on a player level. The coaches and the parents really need it as well. So try to teach some emotional intelligence training. We have an ambassador program that does that for the parents and the coaches that we're really excited about. Go to the championforward.org to find more information on that, or check us out on Instagram or whatnot to find more about that. But if that is a passion of yours and you see a lot of the mental and emotional challenges that are going on in sports, please connect with us because our ambassador program is really helping form the basis for some of the parents and coaches starting to make an impact that you can make for your young athlete and your teams and your community in regard to that. So the ambassador program is a really key component. But beyond that, we're building a physical space here in Franklin, Tennessee that people are going to be able to come and visit, and the athletes themselves are going to be able to have a physical experience while they're training to learn some of the physical, the mental and emotional cues that are necessary to deal with um, the failure, the resilience that's needed, kind of the pursuit as they move forward in their sports experience. So that's the goal. I mean, there's a lot of people doing a lot of the mechanics of how you swing a bat, how you field a ball, how you throw the ball, how you do that at the max ability that you can do it. But emotional intelligence is a really key component, not just of learning how to deal with those things right now, but what's going to make you a great leader in the future. That's the number one thing that all businesses are trying to teach their C-suite leaders right now, executives, is how to be emotionally intelligent. So
Hmm.
if we can help younger kids and families and parents grab onto that now, in my opinion, they're going to have a better experience with as they pursue sports and better relationships in the future with what they're creating right now. So we're really trying to help with that part of the game.
It sounds awesome, and that's 100% in line with what I have a 12-year-old, and
Oh, you
it's
need it, Jason. You got to
it's
join the
yeah, it's
ambassador program, man.
yeah, it's crazy at the 12-year-old level, going to some of these travel tournaments, some of these, I mean, thank God my team's not like some of these others, but some of the stuff you see from these parents, I'm just like, you're putting so much pressure on that kid, and he's 12 years old. I'm like, I don't even have that much pressure at my work every day, and I'm 47 years old.
Yeah. And
So,
even those the kids or the parents that aren't doing that, those kids are still feeling pressure. So they need some
yeah,
because there's different things that I talked about earlier in this podcast, there's different things that they're dealing with. We need to give them different tools and techniques to deal with those things. And
yeah.
that's where we come in and we like to help infuse that into not just families, athletes, but also the coaches. I'm and I'm also in the place now of I am primarily a parent and a coach. I'm not an athlete anymore,
Right.
right? So I'm experiencing sports through my kids in a different way, right? I got feelings about that, and I have feelings about failures, and I have feelings about what as my kids grow and they move into the next realm, what that's going to give to them, the experiences that's going to give, and the comparison and all that. So how am I as a parent and a coach? I'm helping a little bit with my kids' school. How am I going to do my own work and then help my kids do their own while they're trying to pursue this? Because we have feelings about it and we need it just as much as they do.
Well, I appreciate all your time today, Ben. It's been a pleasure reminiscing about some of my my fond memories of you with the Cubs. And I'll definitely check into this and definitely get others in, to check into your foundation because it sounds like it's something that is really needed, but maybe people don't understand the necessity of it. So
That's right. That's right.
I will definitely get that pushed out to you. So,
Please do. All right.
all right,
Thanks for
well,
talking, man. It's been a
all
great
right,
conversation.
all right. Well, thanks a lot. You have a great rest of your day, sir.
You too.
Bye bye. you all for joining me for today's episode of Awakening 37 Beyond the Scoreboard with Ben Zobrist. I hope you all enjoyed the insights to his career and his upbringing, and everything like that. I hope you also enjoyed the mental insights that he threw in, as far as some little tips on how to, stay in the moment, and stay present. It's very good advice. Especially for an athlete, you can't always control what's going to go on. It's kind of like the whole, control what you can control, stay in the moment and control what you can control at that time. Very, very good insight. Um, Also, like he was talking about his Champion Forward campaign, I wanted to let you know that that is championforward.org. It's also for individuals who, parents, coaches, athletes, to get on there and actually get assistance for your mental state in your athletic adventures. Um, and everything like that. I encourage you, if you have that motivation, please go in there and sign up to be an ambassador for Championing Forward. It's a great cause. And it should only ultimately help out our young athletes. So, once again, thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks a lot.